On January 11, 1944, Major James Howard of the 354th Fighter Group climbed into his P-51 Mustang, leading a squadron tasked with escorting a formation of B-17 bombers deep into German airspace. The sky was gray, the cold biting, and the tension palpable as they crossed the front lines. Below, the towns and fields of Germany stretched into the distance, silent for now, but soon to be filled with the roar of anti-aircraft fire. The bomber formation advanced steadily, relying on their escorts to fend off the ever-present Luftwaffe fighters that patrolled the skies. Howard knew the mission was dangerous. Reports indicated increased enemy activity in the area, and intelligence warned of concentrated fighter forces waiting to intercept. For the bomber crews, survival depended entirely on the skill and courage of their escorts. As the formation approached Oschersleben, Howard scanned the sky for threats. Suddenly, a group of approximately 30 German fighters appeared, descending aggressively toward the vulnerable bombers. Chaos erupted as the enemy pressed their attack, guns blazing and engines screaming. Howard's squadron immediately engaged, but within minutes, many of the other American fighters were either damaged or forced to retreat. The bomber formation was exposed, and the responsibility now fell almost entirely on Howard's shoulders. He knew that one decisive action could determine whether dozens of men would live or die. The first attacks came fast, testing his reflexes, his strategy, and his courage. The sky had become a deadly arena, and Howard was ready to face it alone if necessary. Within moments, Major Howard found himself nearly alone. The rest of his squadron had been forced to peel away, leaving him as the primary defender of the B-17 formation. Around him, 30 German fighters swooped and dived, attempting to break the bomber formation with relentless attacks. Howard's Mustang weaved through the chaos, bullets ripping past his fuselage. Each maneuver required split-second precision. Climb, roll, dive, and bank in exact coordination to avoid being hit while positioning himself to strike back. The German pilots were experienced, aggressive, and determined to destroy the bombers. Despite the overwhelming odds, Howard remained focused. He aimed carefully, firing bursts that forced the enemy to break off or veer away. His skillful maneuvers protected the vulnerable B-17s, giving them time to maintain formation and avoid fatal hits. Minutes stretched on like hours. Each attack came faster than the last, but Howard refused to yield. He alternated between aggressive counterattacks and evasive maneuvers, keeping the Germans off balance. His mind calculated trajectory, speed, and altitude constantly, aware that a single mistake could be deadly. The bomber crews below watched as the lone Mustang danced among their attackers, a protective shadow in the sky. Howard's courage and precision gave them hope, allowing them to continue their bombing run and survive the initial onslaught. The odds were staggering, yet the young ace showed no sign of faltering. Every moment in the air was a battle for life, not just for him, but for every man in the bombers he defended. As the dogfight raged over Oschersleben, Howard seized a fleeting opportunity. One German fighter, attempting to break through to the bombers, exposed itself during a sharp dive. Howard lined up his sights and fired, sending a burst of bullets into the enemy aircraft. The fighter went down in flames, spiraling toward the ground. It was Howard's first confirmed kill of the engagement, but he had no time to celebrate. The other enemy fighters were still circling, ready to strike, and the bomber formation remained in danger. Howard's actions, however, had an immediate effect. The German pilots became more cautious, realizing that one determined American could disrupt their coordinated attacks. His precise flying and timely aggression forced them to reconsider each maneuver, buying precious seconds for the bombers. Smoke trailed from his own Mustang, proof that the aircraft had taken hits. Shrapnel tore across the wings and fuselage, yet Howard pressed on, determined to hold the line. Each kill, each maneuver, was a step toward saving the men below. The bomber crews could only glance upward in awe as Howard continued to engage the enemy, single-handedly creating a buffer between them and destruction. The sky was a chaotic theater of life and death, and the young ace performed with unmatched skill under extreme pressure. Even amidst the chaos, Howard's focus never wavered. His priority remained clear. Protect the bombers at all costs. As the engagement continued, Howard's Mustang began to show signs of serious strain. Bullets had punctured his fuel tanks, and the engine shuddered under the repeated maneuvers. Yet, despite the damage, he pressed forward, unwilling to abandon the bomber formation. The German fighters regrouped, attempting coordinated attacks from multiple angles. Howard was outnumbered, forced to dodge and weave while keeping an eye on every threat. His arms ached from controlling the aircraft, and his mind raced to calculate every evasive action while maintaining offensive capability. Time seemed to stretch endlessly. Each pass of the enemy could have been his last, yet he continued to intercept any fighter approaching the bombers. His calm under pressure, honed through countless hours of training, became his greatest weapon. The bomber crews watched in astonishment. What began as a desperate defense was turning into a display of unmatched courage and skill. Howard's actions were not only keeping the German fighters at bay but also inspiring hope among those who faced annihilation below. Every decision, every turn, required precision. The Mustang groaned under the stress of combat, but Howard refused to yield. He was determined to ensure the bombers completed their mission safely, no matter the personal cost. By now, the battle had turned into a tense chess match in the sky, with Howard moving each piece expertly, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. Howard's relentless defense continued as the German fighters pressed harder. He could feel the exhaustion creeping in, yet the thought of the vulnerable B-17 crews below kept him going. Each bomber that survived another attack was a testament to his skill and courage. The enemy attempted to overwhelm him with simultaneous attacks from above, below, and the sides. Howard's reflexes were tested to the limit. Rolls, dives, and sharp climbs became second nature, each maneuver calculated to protect the bombers while avoiding enemy fire. At one point, a German fighter dove aggressively toward the lead B-17. Howard intercepted immediately, firing bursts that forced the attacker to break away. Another fighter attempted to flank him from the left. Howard executed a rapid roll and counterattack, sending it spinning away. Minutes stretched on, each seeming longer than the last. The sky was filled with tracer fire, smoke, and the deafening roar of engines. Yet despite the chaos, Howard maintained a remarkable clarity of thought, balancing offense and defense perfectly. The bomber formation slowly began to regain composure, keeping tighter formations under Howard's protection. His actions had created a buffer between the Germans and the bombers, allowing them to proceed with their mission and avoid catastrophic losses. Even though fatigue and damage were mounting, Howard continued to hold the line, fully aware that the lives of dozens of men depended entirely on his ability to stay in the fight. By now, Howard was completely alone in the sky. His fellow squadron members had either been forced to disengage or were too far to provide support. 30 German fighters circled, swooping in waves, each attack more dangerous than the last. Despite being vastly outnumbered, Howard's determination never wavered. He used every tactic he had learned. High-speed dives to gain position, tight rolls to evade fire, and precise bursts to disrupt enemy formations. His Mustang groaned under the strain, but he continued to press the advantage wherever possible. One enemy fighter attempted to attack from above. Howard rolled sharply, using the element of surprise to line up his own shot. He fired a short burst, forcing the German to break away, buying precious seconds for the bombers below. Another fighter tried to sneak in from the rear again. Howard's reflexes and focus ensured it never reached the target. The bomber crews were astonished. They could see him weaving and firing, single-handedly defending them from annihilation. Every evasive maneuver and counterattack kept the German fighters at bay, giving the bombers a chance to complete their mission. Howard's mind and body were pushed to their absolute limits, yet he remained calm and precise. Every decision mattered, every second was life or death. In that sky, the young American ace had become more than a pilot, he was a guardian, standing between the enemy and the men below. As the battle entered its final phase, Howard faced the most aggressive attacks yet. The German pilots, frustrated by their inability to penetrate his defense, coordinated multiple dives and flanking maneuvers, trying to overwhelm him simultaneously. Howard's Mustang had taken numerous hits. Smoke curled from the fuselage, and the engine shuddered under stress, but he refused to relent. Every attack was met with precision countermaneuvers, forcing the enemy to break off or risk being hit themselves. At one point, a fighter dove directly toward the lead B-17. Howard reacted instantly, rolling his Mustang into position and firing a calculated burst. The German fighter spun away, leaving the bomber untouched. Another attacker attempted a rear approach, only to be driven off by a well-timed climb and burst of gunfire from Howard. The bomber crews below began to sense a shift. Thanks to Howard, the concentrated attacks were failing. His skill and determination had disrupted the enemy formation, preventing any significant damage to the B-17s. Despite exhaustion and the physical strain of the Mustang under combat stress, Howard continued to hold the defensive line. Each maneuver was deliberate, each burst of fire purposeful. For the men in the bombers, he had become the difference between survival and disaster. By the end of the engagement, Howard had single-handedly defended the bomber formation from near-certain destruction, demonstrating unmatched courage and aerial mastery. After a grueling fight lasting over 20 minutes, the German attackers began to withdraw, unable to penetrate Howard's defense. The bomber formation, battered but largely intact, continued toward its target and eventually turned for home. Howard's Mustang bore the scars of the battle. Bullet holes peppered the fuselage, control surfaces were damaged, and smoke still trailed from the engine. Every maneuver had tested the limits of both pilot and aircraft. Yet despite the danger, he had kept the B-17s safe, ensuring the success of their mission. The bomber crews could hardly believe their eyes. A single P-51 had stood between them and overwhelming odds, demonstrating courage, skill, and determination beyond measure. Howard's actions would later be recognized as one of the most heroic solo defenses in aerial combat history. Once the immediate threat passed, Howard checked the condition of his Mustang, made minor adjustments in flight, and guided it back toward Allied airspace. Every mile brought relief, but also the lingering awareness of how close he had come to disaster. This engagement left a lasting impression on everyone involved. The bravery and selflessness shown in the sky became a legendary example of what one pilot could achieve, even when outnumbered and facing seemingly insurmountable odds. Upon returning to base, Major James Howard was greeted with astonishment and admiration. The Mustang he flew was heavily damaged, yet he had managed to protect an entire bomber formation from destruction. The ground crews and fellow pilots were amazed at the sheer skill and courage he had displayed. Howard recounted the battle in detail during debriefing. His descriptions of outmaneuvering 30 enemy fighters alone, protecting the B-17s, and maintaining control of his damaged aircraft inspired both awe and respect. It became clear that his actions had saved countless lives that day. The story quickly spread through the ranks, elevating Howard to legendary status among American fighter pilots. Military historians later noted the engagement as one of the most remarkable acts of solo aerial defense in World War II. For Howard personally, the encounter became a source of reflection. He understood that skill, courage, and quick thinking had combined with a sense of duty to the men he was protecting. The day would remain a defining moment in his life and career. Even decades later, Howard and those who survived the mission recalled the event with reverence. It stood as a testament to the extraordinary difference one individual could make in the chaos of war. The legacy of Major James Howard's heroic defense lived long after the war. His actions on January 11, 1944, became a symbol of bravery, skill, and selflessness in the face of overwhelming odds. Military historians, Veterans and aviation enthusiasts celebrated Howard's feat as one of the most remarkable solo defenses in World War II. His ability to protect an entire bomber formation, alone against 30 enemy fighters, exemplified the highest ideals of aerial combat. Courage, precision, and unwavering dedication to duty. Howard received numerous honors for his heroism, including the Medal of Honor, cementing his place among the most celebrated American aces. But beyond the awards, his story inspired generations of pilots and military personnel to strive for excellence and to act decisively in moments of extreme danger. For those who flew under his protection that day, Howard was more than a pilot, he was a guardian who risked everything to ensure their survival. The battle over Oschersleben became a legendary example of how one individual's skill, bravery, and determination could alter the course of events and save lives. Even today, the story of James Howard reminds the world that courage in the sky, selflessness, and quick thinking can turn desperate circumstances into enduring tales of heroism.